Soundcheck. Guten Morgen, Claudia. Hörst du mich?
Ja, ich höre dich.
Ah ja,
Hi.
Kann ich ja wieder stumm machen, oder? Dann schön der Reihe nach. Okay.
All right.
So, guten Morgen.
Good morning.
Claudia Singer, hörst du mich?
I hear you loud and clear as a bell.
Okay, dann mache ich wieder stumm.
All right. I think I just start because it's 10 o'clock and it seems like we already have quite a lot of people here. So I think just as well start our 2 days online meeting of the Danube Local Actors Platform. It's a premiere and I'm happy to welcome all of you. Just a short shout out to you. Can you hear me clear? Just maybe indicate shortly in the chat function, couple of people, if you can hear me. Yes, thank you. Perfect. Okay, if you have some troubles in hearing me or or anything else, please shout out to us, to me, and to my colleague Martin, and we try to do our best to to make to get the information and to you. So okay. So before we start into this meeting, I want to share a couple of housekeeping rules with you. Okay, so just for the sake of, maybe I just want to say hello, and you can see me, I guess, that now better switch off the camera so you can focus on the slides. To the housekeeping rules, we suggest that everyone is muting their microphones and switch off their cameras to ensure a good transmission quality. So, of course, if we all have our cameras and microphones switched on, that might hamper transmission quality and maybe also be a bit distracting, although it's always nice to see you. And I recommend that only those who are presenting of course, unmute the microphones because we also want to hear what you're saying, and you can consider if you want to share your video with us. Also, just quick information to you, the meeting and presentations will be recorded, and also the presentations will be shared with you. If you have any issues with the recording, please tell us. Otherwise, it is just for the sake of documentation, so that you can have also an opportunity to tune in if you want to get back to some information that we present today. And last but not least, and it's very important, of course, you have also the opportunity to ask questions. And after every session, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask questions. We also, as you may have seen, a chat function. If you have not activated the chat function, you see a speaking bubble. And if you click on the speaking bubble, the chat function opens, and you can write your questions or your comments to all of the group or just to single participants of the group. So what we will do is, if you want to ask a question and you can't wait for the Q&A session, you have the possibility to insert your question in the chat function, and during every Q&A session, Martin and I will have a look at the chat function and see if there are any questions that we discuss, or otherwise you have the possibility to unmute your microphone and ask the question directly to the presenters. Also, since time is very scarce, we unfortunately won't have a tour de table today. Therefore, we kindly ask you, if you engage with us, if you ask questions, if you want to make some comments, please just shortly say who you are and where you're from. Okay, so that leaves me, just to go to the agenda for today that you all received before the Easter holidays. So today we have a very, as you can see, a very short version of what we actually planned at the meeting for the Danube Local Actors Platform in mid-March, that we unfortunately couldn't organize due to the coronavirus pandemic. So we thought about having a, let's say, very slim version, and as you can see, we more or less squeezed 2 days in 2 hours. But we thought that it's very important also to share a couple of information with you, and also to keep you updated on what's going on in the Danube strategy. So what we have now is, in the first session, the EUSDR updates with information from of the priorities of the Croatian presidency of the Danube strategy. We also get to know a little bit more about the embedding process of the Danube strategy in the new EU programs for 2021 to 2027. And we will also hear, and this is also great, that the new revised EUSDR action plan was recently published, and we will also hear a couple of words on where we are now and what we can expect from this new revised action plan. And I think this is also very it's also a good occasion to learn a bit more about the revised action plan, since we all worked on the preparations for the past year. The next session, there will be some presentations about the Danube Participation Day in 2020 and the youth involvement in the Danube region, because actually, and this is also very pleasant, this is also pleasant news, we have a lot of initiatives on youth involvement currently going on, and it's also good to see where we're standing now, where are potential synergies, and what is happening actually there. And we would like to present that to you and share some information on these recent developments. And last but not least, we will deal also a bit with funding information and project databases. This is actually a result from our last DLAB meeting, where we talked about how we could possibly support each other and support stakeholders in facilitating project development, facilitating search of project partners. And we, of course, hope that that with these presentations, we can offer you a slight contribution to finding your suitable funding sources or finding suitable competent partners. And sadly, since it's very omnipresent at the moment, we also thought that we might also share a couple of news on funding related to measures against SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. So this is where we are, and I think this already brings me to our first session on the EUSDR updates. And therefore, I would kindly ask Mislav to start his presentation. I will stop my presentation here and ask Martin to hand over to Mislav. Thank you.
Yes, 1 second. I just have to find him. There, I found him. I will try to make him a moderator.
Okay. So also please be patient. It's our first online meeting in this form.
So, and yeah,
Okay.
it's done from my side.
Isla, are you here?
You can see.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I don't know. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we
now
can
we
see
can
the
see.
presentation. The screen. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. So here it is. So good morning, everybody. My name is Mislav Kovac. I'm coming from the Ministry of Regional Development and EU funds from Croatia. We are now acting presidency of the Danube strategy for this year. And we developed this program at the very beginning, since we didn't have this situation right now. Otherwise, we will do as much as we can to influence on this situation and cooperation, how to tackle these difficult times. And of course, I will show you now the slides and our presentation, what we have in mind. But of course, till the end of our presidency, we would like to not only to adapt to the new situation, like to do something and see how the macro-regional strategies can help in this regard. I'm not sure. I prefer that you stop me and ask me questions. I'm not sure how would it be feasible at the moment. So I'm open after my presentation to answer any of your questions. You can contact me directly via email or via phone, or you can just write me in the chat. I will reply to you. So about the Croatian presidency, during our presidency, we were very lucky that we also have one presidency more. So Croatia is having the presidency of the Council of the EU. So a lot of things that are happening in the Danube strategy and a lot of things that we are doing in our presidency, we can also bring to the whole European Union. We can also bring to the Council, and this is very important due to the political support of our presidency. Our central theme of the presidency is the Danube strategy 10 years after or later. Why? Because now is the time when we are 10 years older. We have the new action plan, which is revised. Roland will tell you more afterwards. And we wanted to take stock of what we have achieved during this 10 years, what has been done in the Danube strategy, and try to, let's say, define the path for the maybe next 10 years of the Danube strategy. So what is important to evaluate the results, what has been achieved, and to see what we can do in the future in the terms of the Danube strategy and also macro-regional strategies in general. So we would like to combine these two things. The biggest focus is on the regional development. When I say regional development, I mean in more comprehensive way. So we would like to use all the benefits, all the instruments, all the tools that we have in the region in order to make this region more prosperous, more better, and of course to try to balance the growth in the region between, of course, countries that are more developed and countries that are maybe less developed. In that respect, we are having, as I told you, the action plan, who is new, who is revised, who has new actions, objectives, which are adapted to the current situation, to the current to the current opportunities, and also looking to the new programming framework of 2021-2027. As you know, this was a very long process. We have a lot of debates, a lot of discussion, how we need to approach towards this, and we came to the conclusion. And last week, this was finally and officially done. Of course, we are aware, and what we would like to do, not only to have the action plan, then to turn the action plan into the concrete actions. I will also explain you about the embedding process that Claudia already mentioned. We understand that, for example, for the financing or for the maybe managing authorities, if you would like to contact them and to try to explain how do we need to finance the Danube strategy and how we can turn the actions into something very concrete, it would be very hard. So we said, okay, we would like to do this embedding process on how to turn these macro-regional priorities that we set into the action plan into the concrete actions that could be financed in all EUSDR countries, not only from the ERDF, then from the IPA funds and also NDP funds in the future. We set 3 political objectives. As I told you, the first and the most important for us was strengthening the role of regional development. The second one is the synergy between macro-regional synergy between macro-regional strategy and cohesion policy. This is something that we would like to make the synergies between our presidency here and the council presidency, and of course cooperation with the countries of Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership. We put a lot of emphasis on this. Unfortunately, most of you know that let's say crown of our council presidency was supposed to be at the beginning of the May, this Western Balkan summit. From the last information that I got, unfortunately, I'm not sure that it will happen at the beginning of the May. For sure, it will happen during our presidency, and of course, since the new situation is like this, I can imagine that it will be online format than the conference. But this is just to tell you that we are very committed to make this happen, and of course to give incentive and support to our colleagues from the Western Balkans to continue. Regarding thematic priorities, we put 5 main priorities which are important for us, but of course these are not solely priorities. We have in mind to combine priorities that are including more. We see this through the priority area. So we define priorities to include more priority areas or more priorities that are set in the strategy. So the first one is cooperation between research institution and business stakeholders. The main emphasis is to see how we can combine science and the economy. I think this is not only important for the Danube region, then for the whole Europe, and we put a lot of emphasis on this as a topic that rise from this priority is bioeconomy. For us, also very important topic. I can say that for Croatia is a little bit new in comparison to the maybe other countries, but we are doing our best, and we would like to make more, of course, investment and emphasis on bioeconomy. Also, the second priority is concerning on environment, so environmental protection, but through the sustainable economic development. So I really cannot agree that environmental protection and economic development cannot be combined. Of course, they need to be combined. And in Danube region, we have, I think, one of the most preserved environments. So we need to let's say, we need to try to stay as it is, but of course not to forget that we also need to make growth, and that we need also to develop our economies. The third thematic priority is combination between inland waterways, tourism, and smart villages concept. The fourth one, we didn't know that it will, but now I think it's the most relevant. So civil protection through the development of multidisciplinary teams. So so that we can respond to the crisis, to the disasters as soon as we can, and of course to cooperate in this, because disasters doesn't know the borders. And the last one, maybe the most relevant for our PA10, is the capacity building of regional and local governments. In Croatia, it's very important. I know that also some other countries have very small units, very defragmented local and regional government. So we would like to build their capacity and strengthen them in order to better not only let's say use the EU funds, then also to make a better planning of regional development. And of course, this is in line with our political objective. Yeah, the presidency calendar, key events. This is something that is already outdated. Unfortunately, meeting of the ministers in charge of cohesion policy does not happen at the beginning of March due to this corona crisis. But why we put this event? Because we knew that the action plan will be published. Now, since it is published, we would like to present it on the let's say highest possible level meeting. That's why we are in contact with our colleagues from the Commission, and we would like maybe in the next month or two would like to put our action plan of the Danube strategy on the agenda of some high-level meeting, because we see that this is very important. And before we go into any other direction, we definitely need to have this political approval. What is still relevant, although I am not sure that it will happen, of course, physically, is 30 years of Interreg celebration that we plan in Croatia, and we wanted to put this under our not only Danube, then the Council presidency. Simply, you know, that this is now the 30 years since the Interreg started, and Croatia is taking let's say, not huge part in the Interreg in general, but Interreg is very relevant for Croatia, and this is something that help us a lot, not only in our let's say development phase, in our negotiation phase as well. And we would like to pay special attention to the Interreg. The main theme of this event will be the youth, and later on I will maybe give a little bit more explanation what we have in mind. This is also something that is planned together with Interact and colleagues from DG Regio. And we would like to make this big celebration, so of course of Interreg and of cooperation, but with special emphasis on youth. If it will not be possible to have physical meeting in June, then we will postpone it, and we can maybe see to have it back to back to our annual forum, which is the third, let's say, main event. As you all know, this is something that will happen in October. The dates are still not confirmed, but for sure it will happen in October, and we are now developing the website in which you can make the registration and everything. So we will try to send you the save the date as soon as possible, so you will be able to register on time. And the operational calendar. So we already have these meetings in February. Meeting of presidencies of 4 macro-regional strategies. This is something that is worth to mention. So during our presidency of the Danube, we initiated meeting of all 4 macro-regional strategies, but trio presidency, because we saw that we are talking a lot about the cooperation between the strategies, but we are in practice not doing a lot, especially now when we have this situation, as I told you. So it is very important to see how the macro-regional strategies can help to fight this corona crisis, and how it can help to the different regions in the Europe to better respond on it. That's why we initiated this format. It was very warm welcome by all the participants, also I think by the Commission, and we will have now, I can say, regular meetings, presidencies together with the Commission, in order to see how we can tackle these issues and the problems that macro-regional strategies are facing, and how we can, but not only macro-regional strategies, then the regions in all, and so that we are able to give a proper answer to that. The meetings that are in plan, I'm not sure, of course, whether it will be held physically, are the joint meeting of the national coordinators and the priority area coordinators during the May. We plan to organize this meeting. Maybe it will be separate meeting, but as soon as we will be able to meet and to travel, then we will have this joint meeting. Also, what we have in mind is to have a joint meeting between the national coordinators and the task force of the Danube program, future Danube program, because you know that in the regulation it is envisaged that the Danube that the programs who are having the same geography as the macro region are supporting these strategies. So in order to better align and to make the synergies between the program and the strategy, we would like to help our colleagues in the task force in order to bring them a better voice of what strategy is needed. And I think here also one meeting that was already held about the embedding. I haven't spoke much about this, but as I told you, this is initiative also during our presidency of the Danube. What we would like to do is simply to translate the macro-regional strategies priorities from the action plan that are now set into the concrete actions and to link it with the sources of financing, because we saw that in this programming perspective, it was all the time debates how much we are contributing to the macro-regional strategies, how much money we are devoting to the priorities of the strategies. So in order to avoid this, in order to bring the strategies, let's say, to the ground, to the field, and make the concrete of the strategy and not only something that is written in some document, we set up this embedding process. We have so far 2 meetings. We agree on the process. The guidance for this process was developed by, let's say, a lot different stakeholders, and now it's in the process. Probably Claudia will explain you later. Now is the process for all in the process that all the priority areas should identify a short list of the priorities, so maximum 3 priorities that they consider to be relevant for the financing in the future perspective. But these priorities, of course, have we also give some features that all priorities should have. So this is not something that, okay, now we consider this as a priority. No, we put very clear and transparent things and the feature what these priorities should consist, or how in which direction we need to define them. We also have in mind a lot of thematic conferences and the events on something that was already held, but unfortunately most of them are planned in the April, May, and June. Now this will not be possible, but we will not, let's say, forget them. We would like to just put them on the hold, and as soon as it will be possible to have or to maybe held these events, probably the organizers will do it. This is not, of course, up to us. Then we include a lot of different ministries, institutions that are having some conferences, workshops, or the events that already planned, and of course are linked with our presidency program and with our priorities. So this is all. As you can see, here is the email address and the web page. On this web page, as I told you, you will have a registration for the annual forum once it will be available, and once we will know the certain date for the annual forum. If you need anything, just let me know, and I will be, of course, here during the meeting, so I am available to all the questions and maybe debate on what I presented right now. So thank you very much. I'm now leaving. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. For this presentation. I can see that we already got a couple of questions. I thought at first that we might just answer that at the end of the session, but maybe we can also answer a couple of questions now. Just before we start, I would like to get back to the question that is asked by Irene Lucius on the criteria for the priorities on the embedding process. And I would like to put a pin into this question because we will have a presentation by Katarina on the embedding process, where we'll also get a bit more insights on how this is working, and then we can also talk a bit about how we plan to do this in the priority area 10 and why we do what we do. But apart from that, we have a couple of questions also regarding the presentation on the presidency. Actually, the first one is by Eva Taraneshkova. That was, I think, related to the topics and thematic priorities of the presidency about what do you mean under smart villages?
Yeah, thank you very much, Claudia. What we mean under smart villages, unfortunately, this concept is not very famous in Croatia, but we see a lot of benefits from it, and we discuss with our counties, with our regional government, who are having a more rural area, to, let's say, revive this rural area, and we see that the concept of the smart villages is one of it for sure. What we mean under the smart villages, we mean simply to, of course, combine all of this concept that we have in mind. So, first of all, put the emphasis on the bioeconomy and bioeconomy, which we find a sector which will be very growing, and sector which can help a lot in this. Of course, the digitalization. We are also having plans how to digitalize our rural areas, our villages, and make them, of course, make them more connected, but not more connected to, let's say, the general plan is to enable them to not to lose people, than to attract the people in the villages and in the rural areas. So through any means, or through any good tool, or the instruments that we have on our disposal. But the bioeconomy and the digitalization was one of the things that we have in mind, and put, let's say, more emphasis than on the others in these smart villages. We wanted to have in this rural part of the Croatia, in Slavonia, we wanted to have 2 conferences on the smart villages, and of course connected with also rural tourism. But unfortunately, as you can see, this will not be possible at the moment. That's why we don't. Of course, we cannot do it. But for sure, we would like to invite the colleagues and the countries who are having the more experience in this, in order to, let's say, translate to us, or give us advices how they deal with this, because this was also discussed under revision of the action plan, that rural development is something that we should pay attention more, because it is a large part of the Danube area as well.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, then we have also a question, very straightforward, about the location of the annual forum. Is it already decided where the annual forum might take place? I know the circumstances are a bit iffy, but yeah, is there already a set location?
Yeah, unfortunately not. I know that everybody would like that is on the sea and on the coast. For me, it would be also good, and I prefer it as well. But at the moment, I cannot tell you. This is something that is under discussion, the location and the exact date.
Okay, yeah, understandable. So also, please also with a few on time, but there are a couple of questions. All people are very, very curious about the presidency, and there is another question from Radica Curovac. Do you have some documents about the functional tools for implementing key priorities? I don't know. Maybe Radica, you would like to elaborate on what you mean exactly.
But Claudia, if I can just jump in, I can imagine that for example, for the people, when I explain this about this, let's say, functional tool and the embedding, I can understand that for people is hard to imagine what can be. So simply to answer to everybody, we discuss, this is not something new. This is already a concept that was already known. We discuss how to translate this, and we made, as I told you, the guidance paper, which was sent to all the priority area coordinators with the criterias. So this is so with the transparent and clear criterias. I think it will be shared with you, of course, so you will see what we have criteria in mind. And also this is guiding document on few pages, how we see this process. So what are the practical steps, how we, let's say, go from the action plan and the actions to the concrete financing and the implementation of the projects that are deriving from the actions and those priorities. So this is something that is shared, and I think it will be also shared with you, and Claudia will have, I think, also later on the presentation about this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much also for this clarification. There's also a question from Miklos Barabas. Do you have any interaction with the conference on the future of Europe? I guess from the council presidency, you certainly have, I guess. But
yes, we are. We wanted to have as much synergies as possible to the colleagues of the council with the colleagues who are having the main role during our presidency of the council, and we are trying to align as much as we can our efforts and our activities. So yes, we do have, and I don't know if you are interested in any particular thing, but yes, we do have. We also wanted to invite the commissioner who is in charge for this conference of the future of Europe to our event, 30 years of Interreg, that will happen probably in June, if the situation allow us. So yeah, we are in close contact with them, and if you, as I told you, if you have any idea or would you like to suggest anything, just let us know. And we will take into account.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for the offer. I know that there are a couple of other questions, just such as also the involvement of civil society, but I want to make a pin right here, because we also need to look a bit on the timing, and also think that the question of civil society might be also relevant for the other presentations. Therefore, I would like to ask Lana and Irene for a bit more patience on your questions. and we can maybe discuss this also later on. So now I would like to say thank you very much again for the presentation on the presidency and the presidency's priority for this year. And I know that you certainly have a very challenging year and a challenging presidency, the most of any that's existed before. But you do a great work, and I hope you continue to be motivated like this. So now we're going now to the embedding process. So now this is the question on how do we ensure, how do we plan to integrate the Danube strategy into the future programs starting with 2021. And for this, I would gladly and happily invite Katharina Lenz from the Danube Strategy Point to have a short presentation on how this embedding process is working. And I would like to ask Martin to hand over the presentation to Katharina. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I just did that. Yes.
So can you see my presentation already?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So good morning also from my side. My name is Katharina Lenz. I'm a pillar officer at the Danube Strategy Point. I'm responsible for Pillar 1 and Pillar 4, so also supporting Priority Area 10. And I would like to thank you very much for the invitation, and I would like to give you now a short wrap up what we have been done so far in the embedding process and what is also ahead from the viewpoint of the Danube Strategy Point. So first of all, why we do the embedding, we already heard some points in the presentation of the presidency. So first of all, it's a great opportunity for the Danube Region strategy to deliver what is basically expected from it. So based on the common provisions regulation from the European Commission, but also based on the new IPA 3 framework and the NDICI, which is the following program of ENI, and to basically make the breakthrough needed for it. And the second point is also the necessity to include the macro-regional strategies and to jointly agree by all participating 14 countries who have in the EUSDR. And also it might help to identify the challenges with macro-regional relevance in the region. So how do we want to do the embedding now? We want to upgrade now the level of coordination among the 14 countries, and especially among the national and regional authorities responsible for the planning and the programming in the ESI funds and the IPA funds and the NDICI funds. So these were basically the 4 initial steps we already did and what we are planning to do. So under the Croatian presidency, together with the national coordinators and together with the priority area coordinators and an agreement, the embedding process was started and supported by the Danube Strategy Point, and a task force was formed. And they had the first meeting on the 22nd January in Vienna, where they took the initial steps on the national level. In a second meeting, these initial steps were discussed and performed with the priority area coordinators at their meeting in February in Zagreb. And then all these inputs were taken to the third meeting, which was also the second meeting of the task force for the embedding process, which took part within the first EU Macro-Regional Strategies Week in Brussels, organized by the European Commission. So all these main findings, which were discussed in these 3 meetings, should now go into discussion to the next joint NC-PAC meeting, which was planned for to take part in Zagreb but as we heard before, we will find another solution for that now. So which were the main findings out of these meetings and the steps already taken place? The third thing was that the revised action plan has 85 actions, and it would be really hard to utilize to bring all these 85 actions into the embedding process. So there was a decision taken that strategic topics should be generated based on a common denominator out of the PAs to have a more targeted embedding. And then these identified strategic topics would be, on the one hand, part of the embedding process at the national and regional level, but at the same time, they should also be considered to be the fundable topics of the second seed money facility call by the Danube Transnational Program, which will be also coming this year. In general, there should be made a difference between the programming and the implementation phase. So right now we are only at the programming phase where we address the topics. And then at a later stage, there will be also the implementing phase where projects can be discussed. And also this could be macro-regional projects, so covering all 4 macro-regional strategies. But as I said before, this would be at a later stage then. Within the embedding process, there's a proposed course of action determined to the 2 main stakeholder groups, which were identified as the PACs together with the steering groups and the NCs on the other hand. So the PACs play their key role in identifying and designing the strategic topics, and the NCs then played a key role for embedding for the embedding projects in the respective participating country. So the PACs are asked now to swiftly agree on these concise strategic topics for the planning and programming process to allow this targeted embedding and not using the 85 actions out of the action plan. And on the other hand, the NCs are asked to coordinate with their authorities in the respective countries responsible for the ESI, IPA, and NDC funds. And while doing so, they should also identify the areas of cooperation with the respective national and regional line ministries and authorities. So this now might help to answer the questions for the criteria of the 3 priorities which already came up. So these should be based on the new action plans, and the PACs are proposed to choose these 3 strategic topics per PA, including the relevant national regional operational programs. And the proposed timing for it would be until the 4th of May 2020. On the same time, the NCs, in agreement with the PACs, should then approve this short list of strategic topics. And here the proposed timing would be the next NC PAC meeting. Due to the current situation, it is to be rescheduled. And the Croatian presidency and the Danube strategy point are currently searching for alternative solutions, so there might be an online meeting for that. And for the timeline, this would be, of course, then after the 4th of May. Then NCs are also asked to convene meetings with their countries as soon as possible to meet with their managing authorities for the strategic planning and the programming of the ESI, IPA, and NDC funds, and also to involve other relevant stakeholders. And this is an ongoing process which should take part all the time. The same occurs for raising awareness on national level in general through the organization of thematic events. This should be an ongoing process as well. So this is basically the how part, and what we designed together with the Croatian presidency for choosing the criteria for the priorities. So there was this guidance paper, which was already mentioned by the presidency, published. This guidance paper contains a comprehensive instructions, what I already presented here in the presentation, and also an Annex A, the selection of strategic topics. So right here, there should be these strategic topics be filled in, and providing one per topic. And there are questions with the relevant information requested. So this table can then be used on the one side for the embedding process, but on the other hand also for the DTP SMF call. Then we also designed an embedding tool, which is a screening of the EUSDR actions and the funding sources post 2020. This table right now concludes all 85 actions of the action plan, but as it is an ongoing document, we will also have a new version with the revised short list of thematic topics. And then this table can be used by NCs when they're approaching their MAs. For the planning and programming of the EASY, IPA, and NDICI funds, but it can also be used by the PACs for their work, and it might also help the PAC to choose their strategic topics. And there's a third document which goes in line with the tool, because this is basically the ground document for using the table. It's the sources for the content of the EU funding instruments. So this comprises the content of the funding programs, for example, of the Common Provisions Regulation, of the ERDF, of the CF, etc. So you will find all the information in here. Maybe some final remarks at the end. All these tools and all this embedding process, which I now presented, should be considered as an ongoing process, and therefore all these tools should be seen as rolling documents and rolling tools, which will be updated regularly whenever there's a new version of a document. So the whole exercise and the whole process should be considered as a dynamic process, and it will be continued and will be updated when there are new draftings and new submissions of the relevant partnership agreements and of the programming framework. And also the national coordinators should be considered in every country as industry partners, so they should be contacted in this process, and they should also be aware of drafting the relevant partnership agreements and the programs. So as I presented all the guidelines and the documents, these should be considered as a first initial step in the embedding process of the EU strategy for the Danube region. And they show the first coordinated way of embedding in the strategy. And then the next step would be, of course, the how part, and how to actually bring all these topics in there. And this will be then based on the short list elaborated, but of course we still have to wait for this part. And then we could also start in working together with the OPs and having formulation for the operational programs, etc., working on an ERDF network. But this is still a step ahead, and will be considered once these steps are fulfilled now. But maybe worth mentioning is also that there's already a network for the ESF existing, and ones may use this network to already work together with them. So thank you very much for your attention so far, If you have any questions, you can ask them now, or we will postpone them to the end of the meeting. But I think you can also this presentation will be also provided to you after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katharina, to presenting the embedding process and how this is generally working and what is expected. As you said, this is now the step ahead in regarding to embed the strategy. But however, it's not necessarily the first attempt to have a more coordinated approach in the embedding process. As you mentioned before, we are also having this the network of European managing authorities of the European Social Fund, where we are also debating a couple of topics now. And we had the last meeting in March, and I'm also happy that Jörg Mittel is also here, who is representing Priority Area 9, Peoples and Skills, where we also had this joint meeting together. To answer maybe the question now of Irene, but what are the criteria for choosing the 3 priorities? Well, the thing is that we will have to discuss what kind of topics might be of transnational relevance, and where are maybe what are topics that are relevant, as well as for EU member states, and just as well for non-EU member states, and how are maybe some of the topics reflected in the different programs. So I think this will be certainly one of the topics that we need to discuss with the steering group. So this is what Priority Area 10 is doing. Actually, there is no clear let's say no clear regulation, no clear rule how the priority areas or the priority area coordinators are finally getting to the topics, but we are planning to have a discussion with our steering group members, with both the formal members and the observing members, to get an idea what which topics out of our actions would be relevant for the further discussion. At the same time, I also want to make clear this is also from our side a proposal of topics, and how they will be reflected in the operational programs is also something that is partly up to the national coordination and also partly up to the entire programming process in the countries themselves. So this is also a bit of some remark in terms of managing the expectations and how we get to the topics. And I think, and this can't be underestimated at the moment, we don't know how the current coronavirus pandemic will affect the programming process and the topics that are chosen during the programming procedures. Nevertheless, if you are interested also in the other priority areas and how this is working, I just can recommend to maybe ask them how they plan to have this procedure. As you know, we need to submit the topics by the 4th of May. So it's very likely that all the priority area coordination teams are currently preparing or start to prepare this topic selection. All right, then. So thank you again, Katharina, for this presentation. We'll of course keep you updated on how this embedding procedure is moving on, and we'll also keep you informed. So now the next presenter will be Roland Meyer-Frey from DG Regio, and I would be very happy if you can tell us a little bit more about. Oh, thank you for sending the link to the action plan. So yeah, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about the action plan, the new revised action plan of the Danube strategy. Thank you.
Hello all together. I will also switch on my camera. So I have no presentation for you, so I could just also use the picture of my camera. And with regard regarding the time, I would like to be rather short. What I would like to underline is the importance of the new action plan also for you as local actors, as people coming from the local level, from the urban level, municipalities, rural areas. You might just go into the document with your with the search function and find out what is in there. And I wanted to point out some of the actions which might be of special relevance for you. For example, when you go into the action plan, you will have a let's say very quick executive summary. This is for all those who just have to make a short overview. And then you will find, let's say, the background, but what is for the implementation of the actions, of course, most important is to see what is in there. And there you will find the actions themselves, starting with an overview. And in this overview, you might find, for example, actions in the transport and mobility sector. Also, for example, on the local level, to ensure sustainable metropolitan transport systems and mobility. Regional and local cross-border infrastructure is there. Intelligent traffic systems, especially in urban regions, and so on. You find something in the energy sector when it is about buildings and household heating. You will find, of course, which is becoming now very important, also as a consequence of the coronavirus pandemic, the actions which are foreseen in the culture and tourism sector, which is of course also very pressing to what is in there and which direction perhaps we should go. And then there comes, of course, I'm not going through all the priority areas. I just want to invite you to find out what is in for you in the new action plan. I only want to, on a last remark, to go on the environmental sector. You know that the European Commission is proposing a Green Deal, and this will stay very, very relevant, of course. And for you as local actors, there will be, for example, a message on water quality. I'm just talking about wastewater treatment. And let's say you might wonder what is then the transnational for the huge Danube region, what is the impact? Well, any wastewater treatment along the river and the tributaries of the Danube makes a difference. And when we have a coordinated action, of course, then we will reach the aims that we've set up for ourselves. So I just want to come back to the embedding, because the thing with the Danube strategy, you might know, is that it comes without funding. So it is essential that we link the actions that we have now in a very long and exhaustive discussion process that we have defined, that we link them with the funding resources and with the programs which are already there. And this, of course, means that we, in the first phase, concentrate on the cohesion funds, on the regional development funds, and the European Social Fund. But of course, we have to see all the other funds which are around, Connecting Europe facility, and so on. And this is why they are mentioned in the action plan itself as a strategic background. There you also find what is the relevant strategy. You might link the action with the strategy, and of course then how to come to your projects that you might want to implement on your local level, for example. And then you also will find out very quickly what is a good tool for funding it, and also in which direction to go when it becomes more concrete. When the idea becomes a project, you must become more concrete, and then you can draw very much inspiration of the action plan, at least we hope. This is also where the link is to the embedding that was presented by Katharina just before. The embedding links to the, let's say, to the main programs, to the main funding programs, but of course the Danube transnational program, for example, Interreg, remains relevant, of course. But what we want to do is to go beyond the current situation where, let's say, a major part of projects in the Danube is financed via the Danube transnational program. Why? Because in the program it's just not enough money. So in order to implement the actions which we want to tackle, the big challenges, there you need also the big money, and that's why the embedding is so important. Katharina also told that we try to focus on some priority actions. This is, let's say, one first step to go into the to get results. It's not exclusive. It does not mean that you should not follow up the other actions, for example, which are in the action plan. But you know that the current funding period is ending now in 2020, and the new funding period should begin. In Brussels, we're working with big pressure on the multi-annual financial framework and on the new regulation. And we are continuing to work on this. The motor is still running, so it's not all blocked now by the coronavirus. This comes on top, but this will not stop, of course, the current work, which has also to be done. So means that on your side, you should also continue to develop your ideas, your projects, and to see where it can be linked to the new action plan, and to get into touch very soon with your national coordinator, with your national contact point. If you make a link to the Danube strategy, the idea is that you then also link to the, let's say very bluntly, also to the money, to the funding possibilities to get your project idea into reality. And that's where we want to go in the next funding period. We want a stronger link. We have already in the Danube Management Authority network in the European Social Fund, which is worth being continued and being strengthened and can be opened up to some more partners. We want to do the same with the Regional Development Fund, of course. But it is also up to you to build a network when it comes to funding for civil society, when it comes to matching national funding or even non-governmental funding, which is also there, and to have a look how you can link this with the action plan and with the strategies which are already there. So my invitation is just look at the action plan, look what you can draw out of it, and if there are questions, the colleagues in the priority area are there, very competent. The Danube strategy point is there, also very competent. The European Commission is also open. So please feel free. And I would stop now here. If there are any questions, and we have still the time, Claudia, then we could have now perhaps a short wrap up.
Many thanks to you, Roland, and of course, we should not underestimate the competence of the European Commission. You're very humble in leaving that out. But thank you very much also for the presentation, and also thank you very much for pointing out also the next step that is also basically relevant for the stakeholders, for all of us, to find what's relevant, what do we want to pursue in the action plan, how can we use the action plan in a way that our efforts and our initiatives can gain maximum impact. So we've got a question here that, but still, I understand that that is also, of course, relevant when we talk about EU centralized programs. And this is also a question I see here from Jörg Nietel on how this embedding works for EU programs that are managed by the European Commission. Maybe you want to say a few words?
Yes, I can directly answer this question, or at least give a reply. We have, of course, this revised action plan has gone through an intensive inter-service consultation. And we build up with some of the other line DGs. We build up a very good cooperation already. And so they are now a little more sensitive. What are macro-regional strategies and what is going on in the Danube region? And of course, you might use this. We also want to build a link with maybe with the priority area coordinators and the line DGs, which are relevant when we go into the next steering group meetings. Unfortunately, this has now to be more or less on a virtual basis, but we had the plan already to visit also personally initially the steering group meetings and to bring, if possible, colleagues from relevant line DGs with us. And when you talk, for example, about cultural programs, this is there is already something in the action plan. They have been very creative and active in commenting on our action plan, so you will find some hooks there. Linking to also centrally managed programs. If there are any further questions and say, okay, what can I find there? Then feel free also to contact your priority area coordinator, your national coordinator, your national contact point, or then the commission as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so, and this is also maybe something that I just would like to reinforce, because also based on the revised action plan, we will also take a close look at what are the actions, what are the topics that we want to address and that we want to push forward, and then also see what kind of funding is there, what can we do now in the embedding process to support these actions and funding for these actions, but at the same time also to raise awareness to other funding instruments within the European Union, but also beyond that, and see also how we can also use all the available funding out there to push forward for our actions. I know that we actually formally have a Q&A session. We already discussed a couple of questions. If there are no very urgent questions, I still would like to move forward with our next session, because the time is running away, because we have so much fun here. Anyway, this doesn't mean that if you have any further questions or things that are just coming up a bit later, that you can't ask those questions also after this meeting. So we have the opportunity, and we try to answer all the questions as good as we can. So this would bring me now to the next session, which is the Danube Participation Day and Youth Action Plan. And here we are. Great. So, excellent. Yeah, we heard today already about the annual forum that will hopefully take place in October 2020. We all hope that this will be possible and that we can have the opportunity to meet each other. And as you also may well know, since 2015, the Danube Participation Day is actually an imminent part of the annual forum, as we are since 2015 a side event of the annual forum of the Danube strategy. So also this also means that that every year we are organizing a participation day in close cooperation with the Danube Civil Society Forum and with local organizations usually. And yeah, and every year we are focusing on participation, participatory governance in the Danube region and in the Danube strategy. So this is also what we did last year and this year with this very specific topic, namely topic of youth involvement and youth participation. And we heard also today from Mislav that youth involvement is also a very relevant topic now in the presidency, but also at European level in general. And also in the course of revising the action plan, we talked a lot about rejuvenation of the strategy, rejuvenation of development in the Danube region. So last year we started to work together. We organized the Danube Participation Day in Bucharest, back to back with the annual forum, together with the Danube Civil Society Forum, with the Agapedia Foundation, also with the colleagues from Romania and Baden-Württemberg, and with funding from the State's Ministry of Baden-Württemberg. The Participation Day last year and also this year was part actually of projects on youth involvement in the Danube region that is funded by the State's Ministry of Baden-Württemberg, it was entitled Youth Participation Empowerment, and that was actually where we started to talk. We started to talk about what are topics to be addressed, what is the youth perspective, and what does it actually mean, a youth perspective? So the objective was also to start an interactive exchange that links bottom-up initiatives and also top-down youth initiatives, because we have a lot of grassroots movements, a lot of networks that have a low threshold and for engagement and participation. At the same time, we have highly professionalized organizations and youth policy makers and young politicians, young professionals. And the question is, how do these different dimensions link together, and why should they link together, and what would be the benefit of that? And also, how can young people and young professionals engage to contribute to development in the Danube region? So we had a very interactive session at the Participation Day last year with discussing thematic intervention areas such as environment and sustainability, employability and education, social innovation, entrepreneurship, and connectivity and digitalization. But at the same time, we also thought it's also important to discuss structural intervention areas such as financing. So how do young people gain financing for their initiatives and their projects? What does structural participation mean? How do they get the capacities to involve and participate, but also how to recreate the structures and frameworks to let young people participate? Cross-border cooperation. So how do young people gain and get capacities to engage at cross-border level? How do they get and know competent and reliable partners across borders. And also about information communication. So how do young people get information on region development? How is communication organized? How can we engage in a communication, actually? So we have a lot of different, so we had, as you can see, a lot of different topics that we started to talk on, a couple of results that were that provided us a couple of insights. And we want to carry on with this process now in 2020 and carry on with this discussion on youth participation and empowerment. And one part of that was the draft of a youth action plan. And I will get to this later. So now, actually, now what I want to say is that we, unlike usually we have actually at this point of the year, we already have a draft agenda that we can concretely discuss. This year, it's a bit different. It's all a bit improvised in a way because we all have to adjust to this situation, which doesn't mean that we were lazy or didn't do anything. However, we're still trying to see how we get through and how we carry on with the organization. Nevertheless, this should also be, we want to keep you informed on where we are, what the topic will still be, youth involvement and participation this year. And what we would also like to ask you is if you know any youth initiatives, youth projects, or speakers, activists, young professionals, politicians, who you think are very interesting or should be heard, please let us know and send us also your suggestions and proposals for speakers or projects. Because again, we know that we still aim for a very interactive session, for the next participation day, which means that all our participants are experts. Doesn't necessarily mean that it can only be young people, but of course we want to have a good mix, and we want to engage with the people, with not only, of course, with people who are well established and also maybe well experienced, but at the same time we also need to learn how we engage with each other. So I think, yeah, so if you have any suggestions for us, please let us know. Please send us over information on projects or information on potential speakers or people who might have something to share with us. That would be great. And I can see already, yeah, good thinking. Thank you. So I like your initiative. So it's great to see that you maybe already have someone or something in mind. And please let us know. So now I want to say a few words on the youth action plan that I mentioned before. So we started, so why are we doing this in the first place? We thought actually last year when we had this participation day that we had a lot of very interesting discussions, a lot of insights, and that is, and this is very important for us to see that we want to make it in a more structured way. We want to document what the information and insights that we gathered, and we also want to engage more people in a maybe more or less, let's say, yeah, to have a better framework actually on how to discuss, how to engage, and how to contribute, and also to shed light on what's missing, what do we need, and what is already there, and where can we learn from. So the aim of the Danube Youth Action Plan, so you say, is providing guidance to youth initiatives and young people to proactively shape development in the Danube region, which means we want also to build capacities and see how can actually young people, if they want to contribute to development in the Danube region, if they want to engage at macro-regional level, at cross-border level, so we want to provide also a framework or platform for them to get the information they need, to get the capacities that they need, and also to make sure what capacities they actually need from us. And then it's also a first start to discuss in the EUSDR governance and beyond the long-term sustainable perspective of the EU strategy for the Danube region, because we know that development is always a long-term task, and a long-term task also requires different viewpoints, but it also requires viewpoints from people who might need to carry on development in the Danube region for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on years. So this is very difficult. So this is very important for us, that we make sure to find a mechanism to include young people in this process, in the shape and also in the implementation of the Danube strategy. What you can see here, are the dimensions. So this is actually just so you see a whole structure. So we want to answer the question, why do we need youth involvement? How can we do youth involvement, and what can we actually do? And what are maybe already good practices of youth involvement and youth participation? And what we have here, what you can see here, is a table that alongside we would try to structure our discussions on different levels, such as how can youth perspectives be reflected in the Danube strategic governance? How can we support cross-border youth exchange in the Danube region? And also, how can we support and connect local youth initiatives? Because not every youth initiative is necessarily has this cross-border transnational view, but at the same time, because of the very nature of what they're doing, they're maybe very locally rooted, but at the same time, they're still open for exchange or can benefit from exchange and capacity building at the macro-regional level. And of course, this also needs to be discussed in the way of how can youth contribute to the Danube strategy? So what can the youth bring on the table, so to say? But at the same time, what support can we as this strategy and what can stakeholders of the strategy provide for young people and for young professionals? So that's the structure so far. I can see that there are, so this is, so I can see already in the chat history that we have already a couple of proposals. So according to, so regarding the deadline, I would like to say that, well, we don't have an official deadline, but I would say if you could provide us with some proposals until, I say, beginning mid-June, I think that would be great. The sooner the better, but I think we will maybe send out something in after this meeting and maybe give you some timeline for the proposals. And I would also be very glad if those who already provide some suggestions might just send us a short message, a short response to the email, to the mailing that we send after this meeting. So yeah, this leads me now to also get you a bit more information. Also, actually not me, but the others on youth initiatives that are already planned and going on. And I would like to hand over now to Stefan Barth and Lana Meyer and Irina Gumenchuk, who are actually working on this Danube Youth Network, and respectively also try to discuss this Danube Youth Action Plan already in the National Participation Day. Unfortunately, it's all a bit messy now with the new situation, but as far as I heard, they're already, the colleagues are very adaptive, yeah, so we'll hear a bit more on how this is working. So, whoops. Now I try, yeah, take that back. And maybe Stefan, I give the floor to you.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you very much also for organizing this first online DLAB event. And just briefly regarding this project you just mentioned, I would just like to, I just can add for the information of all the others that we are very happy here in Baden-Württemberg to have really a government that is really interested to include civil society. And so this project, Danube Youth Participation, is a joint effort between the civil society here in Baden-Württemberg, our civil society EUSDR network, and the State Ministry and the Baden-Württemberg Foundation also with many projects. And the lead partner is the big Liebenau Foundation, and I'm happy to be part for the implementation. What we did actually, I think, which is also important for here, that this project Danube Youth Participation. So the goal is that we bring it into ideally in the Danube Youth network in a sustainable form. And Irina will give you later some more infos about the project, about the contents, where we are, where we go. But what we already did by design of the project, we included the participation day as a format. So we have been the main sponsor last year in Bucharest, and will be also this year in Croatia, wherever it's going to be. I hope somewhere close to the Danube. And this funding, so technically it's a good thing to have a sustainable form for this structural dialogue. And what we did through all our networkings in the last years, we could really build trust and select the teams. And this is also where I have my heart in this project, to have bottom-up processes where we really connect. So how can I say, I'm also happy that the BA10 has this DLab format, which is really important. And now, before getting into the details, I would like to name briefly our partners. So we are here is Irina and me here in Baden-Württemberg representing the network, the EUSDR network as implementers, and we have Isabella, I always check last and last name, Bedriev-Janin, and Mirna Sostarka from Brace Organization in Osijek. We have Mara Mikeu and Laura Estrate from Romania, from the Social NGO Federation, and we have Luben Georgiev from Bulgaria, and last but not least, we have Srčan Stankovic from Supernatural in Belgrade, who is also a long-term actor. So we have a good team. We have built a good team where we kind of streamline the action, and try to build up this bottom-up process that we can really bring kids, young people into the project. Because if you just everybody's imagining, if you have now youth participating in our conference, it's very specific, and you would have a lot of people who really cannot follow what we discussed, which is in a way is normal. But the question is, how, if we want to bring in young people also in the Danube strategy, how can we do it? So, and one more thing, my special thanks go also to Lana Meyer, who will later on also give her contribution, because she has been hosting the Baden-Württemberg government delegation in 2018, and she is also very active in Vukovar with the Europe House. So this is for me actually the good thing or the joy about the Danube strategy, because you have really can get this transnational cooperation going on, and of course we have to bring in youth, so to make it somehow easy, understandable, and really see the benefit. That is my effort. And that would be just these few things from my side. I would like now to give the floor to Irina, that she prepared a few slides that she can tell you more about the ongoing project. Just so much.
Okay.
Are you there?
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Claudia. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, now I'm trying to share my screen. Hopefully do you see now my screen?
Yes, we do.
Oh, perfect. This is the thing that exactly. Okay, so this is the technology that we have to now learn thanks to the virus and not to the government and some digitalization strategy. So we are very happy to be present at this online DLab meeting, and thank you for the word. As Stefan said, I'm also the part of the team of the Danube Youth Participation Project. It is the official name funded by Baden-Württemberg Foundation. I will try to be as short as possible because I know that the time is running away from us. So maybe I will close as well this one. Moment. Can I take it away? Okay, I'll try to say. So Danube Youth Participation, it was a 2-year project funded by Baden-Württemberg, by the State Ministry, Baden-Württemberg, and the main goal is, firstly, to form the team, the young leaders team, who is going to run the project and to run the future Danube Youth Network, which will start up with the end of the project in 2021. And for sure, we want to make it through the bottom-up process, including in the participatory approach and including as many young people in the Danube region as possible, and to make it for sure sustainable and to some extent self-organized. So we are now really experimenting. We are trying to make the structure as flexible as possible, and hopefully it will be something innovative that we can really use, and it will be useful for both young people in the Danube region, young professionals, and also the strategy itself. The roadmap, I'll just take it okay like this. The roadmap, so we included a few formats into the whole 2-year project. So firstly, we would like to reach the leaders, the future, would say elite or future generation of people who will lead the societies locally also. So we drafted, we already have implemented one Danube Leaders Camp, which is going to, took place in Ellwangen, and connected to the Methodius Day, which they celebrate every year in the end of May. This is one of the part of our sustainability strategy, where we cooperate with the city of Ellwangen, and they are financing this event. So we try to have the mixture of the project financing and also the getting additional financing, not to be dependent just on the one financial source. So this is the city cooperation with Ellwangen, our Danube Leaders Camp, where we try to develop the soft skills of the young people in the Danube region. Then we also, as already Stefan mentioned, we took part in the Participation Day, where also the funders of this Participation Day, and we would like to include in the future as many young people also there as possible, to make it as a very big networking event where young people can get to know more about the politics, about the societal developments, and to learn about the EUSDR as well. So this is one of the formats. The next is Danube Youth Exchange. We have already conducted one in Sarajevo last year, when we still had the possibility to be offline and to have the real time exchange. We cooperated with the Danube Culture Museum in Ulm, and we were also part of the Danube Baden-Württemberg political I'd say this political the word is just now fading me, delegation. Yes, delegation to Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the young people were very fascinating to be a part of the discussions with the politicians. We had the cooperation also with the city of Friedrichshafen and with 2 local gymnasium in Friedrichshafen. So the young people were really very happy to be there, and the good exchange took place. Then we were the part of the Social Meets Business event in Bucharest, also part of trying to networking in the region and meet local businesses, meet foundations who try to foster the entrepreneurship also in the region. Then was planned for the May this year, but as you all know, we because of coronavirus, we had to postpone everything, and all the events are now postponed to October, September 2020. So we hope that we will still have to the time in September, October for all the events that are approaching us. So the Danube Leaders Camp, the next one is going to be in October this year. And maybe also in August, September, the next Danube Youth Exchange. So we are trying to reach the young people who are very active politically also, and like already young leaders volunteering in the region. And we also want to have the approach to some disadvantaged young people, because they and include them into our project. So we had these two formats of Danube Leaders Camp and Danube Youth Exchange, where more through the experimental pedagogical approaches and through the art and sport, we can include the other young people also in the Danube region. Then for sure the Danube Participation and in Croatia, somewhere in, I think in the end of October, somewhere in Croatia. And also the last Danube Leaders Camp next year will take place. And hopefully after all these events and networking and what is coming also more, we will be able to introduce to all the actors in the Danube region the future Danube Youth Network, how it will look like. So just very shortly, this our goal, long-term goal, is for sure the institutionalization of the project. So to develop the sustainable strategy, to develop more city cooperations in the region, which will support the young people to bring these locals, the young people, and to one of our goal is also to develop the micro project financing and to help young people to foster them, to empower them with small mini grants that they can make the changes and differences on the very local level. And of course, as a like young, dynamic, hopeful project, we are trying to emphasize on the media strategy and to develop one media strategy for our online part of communications. We had the chance to cooperate with Stuttgart Media University, and the media students were also present at the Danube Participation Day in Bucharest, and they helped us through the student project to make some new first steps in the media communication strategy. And just for you to shortly present our channel, you can follow us and be up to date. Now we are mostly making most Instagrammable places of the Danube region to promote the touristical places in the region, and just to promote this region, because since we don't have so many offline events, we have to survive somehow and to make our channel very active. We reached 1,000 followers a few weeks ago, so we are very happy about that. We are interested, and we also are happy when you follow us and use the hashtag if you want to repost you. So thank you. This is everything from my side. I think for the questions maybe later.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Irina, for this presentation. As far as I think that Lana was supposed to say a few words on the actually planned National Participation Day, if I understood Stefan correctly. Is that true?
You understood very correct.
Yes.
So thank you, Lana. We're waiting for you.
I hope you can hear me. I don't have anything to share, and my connection is rather poor, so I can't switch on my camera. But I just want to wave. Imagine me waving to you from the Danube, from Vukovar. Thank you for the possibility to say a few words here, and thanks to Stefan for this brief introduction. So Europe House Vukovar has been involved with the Danube strategy for a long time, basically through projects, minor or bigger. And we've had a very good cooperation with Baden-Württemberg, with the State Ministry, with Stefan Barth, Agapedia, and the Europa Centrum Baden-Württemberg. we've participated at participation days in Ulm and in Bulgaria. So now, of course, we were really happy that Croatia has the presidency and that we can somehow get involved. And luckily, through Stefan Bart and the Danube Youth Network and our cooperation partners in Osijek, Mirna and Isabella, we started implementing what we wanted to be a national participation day. And the plan was for this one-day event to take place in beginning in April in order to inform as many possible stakeholders on national and regional level about the possibilities in the Danube strategy, possibilities of cooperation and funding, to encourage new partnerships and sustainable projects, and of course everything with the focus on youth, but also of cooperation of youth and intergenerational dialogue. We wanted to prepare a way for the International Danube Participation Day that will take place back-to-back with the annual forum in October. We also hope that the location would rather be something nearer to the Danube. And in that way, the civil society wishes to contribute to the efforts of the local and regional governments. And we believe we do have the capabilities to do so with the help of our partners. And especially with the existing tool, the Danube Youth Network, where we want to motivate young people to get involved and connected. And we had a plan for the National Participation Day to have some short presentations about the Danube strategy, to include a panel discussion with examples of projects that had already taken place instead of such just usual project presentations with real people showing how they implemented and what the good results were. And then we planned for a pro-action cafe. So now that this is unfortunately not going to take place live, and now that there are so many events happening in September and October possibly, we plan to have a series of online meetings, shorter ones, 2 or 3 of them, we hope, that will be efficient. In order to keep it interactive, we're looking for a suitable format of group work, especially for the young people, to hear as many of their ideas and suggestions as possible, maybe a hackathon. So now we're in the process of jointly preparing this series of online meetings and looking at who and when to invite and so on. So this would be all from me. Thank you very much for the possibility to present. And I will definitely see some of you online.
Many thanks from my side. And sorry, so yeah, I would like to thank you for providing us some insights on the Danube Youth Network and also on the plans for this participation day. It's really sad that unfortunately it was not possible to organize it as planned in April, but I hope that we find some way to get together at some other point. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mislav, because I think that he wants to say a few words, maybe also on the youth event, but maybe also want to respond to the presentations maybe. So Mislav, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Claudia. Yeah, I just wanted to share with you our event and what we have in mind, because I see there could be great benefit for us and also for you to merge initiatives and to merge our activities regarding the youth. So the idea comes from the Interact, their inclusive growth network, and together with me and the colleagues from DG Regio, Astrid, we developed one event because we wanted also, as I told you, celebrate the 30 years of Interreg. And you know that one of the 3 topics that would be under 30 years of Interreg is also youth. and so we combine these two things and plan to organize the meeting on the 12th of June. Regarding, unfortunately, due to the situation, I'm not sure whether this will be held, or at least we are trying to find things that we organize this online, but for sure there is intention, if we don't organize it physically, that we organize it back to the annual forum. And it would be good maybe if we can combine these two events and let's say join forces in order to create one big event, which will be of course then visited more, and we would like also to bring, because this our intention was to bring also the politicians to these events in order to pay let's say pay attention, that they should pay attention to this topic, which is very important. Since this was mainly linked to our council presidency, we already, so our ministry for responsible for the youth already organized one event regarding the youth in rural areas, and they are now producing two documents which are under development, and from the conclusion of these documents, which will be shared, I think, when they will be finished, then we start to build our story. We already have some teams. We already have some indicative agenda what we have in mind. First of all, we wanted to focus on the region. So we take into account what is happening in the non-EU countries, and especially this one with the IPA funds. And of course, now the colleagues from Slovenia also share with us this Bled Strategic Forum that is also initiative worth of course to consider and to merge with this. So I can share with you this concept note that was already done, and then we can work together in order maybe to see what we can do together. What I would suggest is to have maybe one, if we opt to organize this back to the annual forum, maybe it would be good to organize one big event in which we will combine what we have in mind and what you have in mind, but also we are open to have maybe two days event. But since this is a similar topic and we are dealing with similar things, then we can for sure make a joint effort to do this. Sorry. Of course, we are planning to make during the event. We are planning to make exhibition, video, ebook, a reflection paper for the future Interreg program in what is related to youth, and of course, contribution to the EU Youth Manifesto that is planned to launch during the Interreg annual event in October. So I think the best way is to share with you this document, and then you can give the feedback to me and see how we can what we can do together. As I told you, I will for sure invite you to the meeting in June. For this online meeting and the physical meeting, we will see how the situation will develop. But if it won't be possible, then we can postpone it till till the annual forum, and then we can create a joint event. So this is really all for me, and yeah, I will share with you this concept note after the meeting.
Many thanks also for this intervention. I think this is very important to know, and I guess it's also given the whole situation at the moment, and also since we're having a lot of youth initiatives going on, it's really worth considering to do. It's really worth considering how to find synergies, and it would be great actually to have the opportunity maybe to work together and see what makes sense for us. So that is thank you also for the offer. Thank you for sharing this information with us, and I would be more than happy if we could also sit together virtually, at least after the meeting, after today's meeting, and then see how we could proceed. And also
okay,
many
Claudia.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one. I will then share with you document, and then you can send this together with the conclusions from the meeting. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. And also many thanks for the bridge, because you were already mentioning the Bled Strategic Forum, the Young Bled Strategic Forum. And so I would like then to give the floor to Meliha, but before I do this, I have to say maybe just a few words, because if you already had a look on the clock, on the watch, you can see it's already 12 o'clock, and the meeting was actually scheduled only for 12 o'clock. Even though Martin, Sophie, and I are very fast in talking if we have to, but of course we might not be able to be as fast as to finish the meeting on time. So just a short remark from my side to the last third of this online meeting. We'll still have it, but of course you might consider to still bear another half hour with us. If you can't make it because you have other obligations, we will of course share we'll share the slides with you. We will share the presentations with you and all the links to the funding information that you need. So this is just the organizational part, and now I go back to Meliha and would like to ask Meliha to say a few words on the Bled Strategic Forum, and also how to adapt this year to the situation.
Hi everybody from my side as well. It's really nice to see you show up to this online meeting in such a large number. As Claudia and Mislav have already mentioned, we at the Center for European Perspective are organizing a Young Bled Strategic Forum, which is an international conference that gathers together young professionals aged between 18 and 35. I will in the comments share a link to our website if you haven't seen it yet. We have just held the applications open until 5th of April. But unfortunately, fortunately, we will not be closing the applications just yet until we formally decide if the event is happening this year or not. For the past 3 years, we have also involved the participants from all the Danube countries. We are also sponsoring their travel and accommodation. So I will be happy if you can share with your networks the link to the applications. It will remain open until we either officially hold the event or decide to postpone it this year. We are staying optimistic and saying that we will definitely hold something this year. It's happening end of August, beginning of September. And it's like a pre-event to the Bled Strategic Forum. That's an international conference, one of the largest that happens in the region. It hosts high-level representatives from politics, from business sector, from basically different sectors, all of them that you can imagine. We have a really nice program planned for this year, but all the invitations and everything has been postponed until further notice. Most probably sometime during middle of May, we will decide whether we are able to carry out this event this year or no. But in any case, I will be happy if you can share with your networks the call for participation if you haven't done so already. And I also really like the idea to create some common synergies with the other youth events that will be happening. We could maybe share our participants the call for the other events as well, and then use some of these same participants maybe in different events so that they could like further on carry the knowledge gained from one event to the other or something similar. So I am very much looking forward to talking with Mislav and Claudia and everybody else on how can we like create synergies. I will most definitely share the link in the chat as well. Shortly from my side, I'm able to answer any questions if you have, and you can just reach me through the email.
Many thanks, Milija, for this short presentation outline. I see that there's a great potential for a huge youth event by the second half of this year, with almost if we all join forces, which would be great. There was a question on sharing the link. I suspect you mean sharing the link for the Bled Strategic Forum or Young Bled Strategic Forum, which would be definitely also be part of the mailing afterwards. So every initiative that we mentioned here now will be also we will also send you reference links and information on what we have mentioned so far. So are there any further questions on this? Okay, so I don't see anyone who is jumping in immediately. So I guess that we are now coming to yeah, thank you, Milija, for your very quick to provide the information, the link. Yeah, I think if there are no further questions so far, I guess we will jump to the funding part. And actually, well, whoops. Although actually, I just would could actually already hand over to Sophie, who will start with a very familiar initiative actually, but nevertheless, it's always good to hear how it works and yeah, so we're starting now with information on funding and databases. It was also something that was requested at the last Danube Local Actors Platform. And yeah, so we wanted to share a bit more, some information with you. If you could bear with us for the next 30 minutes, that would be great. If not, we still will share. We still will share the information with you, and you can take a look afterwards. But nevertheless, we're now starting with funding information project databases, and I hand over to Sophie. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And hello, everyone, also from my part. My name is Sophie Doya, and I work together with Martin Marek for the company Euro Vienna, and together we have cooperated on a lot of different projects together with Priority Area 10 in the past couple of years. And one of them I'm going to specifically talk about today, and it's the Euro Access, as Claudia already mentioned. Now, very shortly, Euro Access is a helping tool to find project funding for project ideas in the different EU macro regions. And as a short historic overview, let's say, it was implemented first in 2016 as a pilot for the EU strategy for the Danube region, and then further expanded to the other EU regions in 2018, sorry. And the expansion is, yeah, continuing now, and we're aiming at actually covering all the different EU funding projects. And right now we're at more than 300 different funding programs and the calls within them. But the mission, of course, is not just to gather the information and catch all of the different EU funding programs, but also to really facilitate access to them. And this mission was initiated by Priority Area 10 of the EU strategy for the Danube region and implemented again here by Euro Vienna, as you can see. And the funding comes from the European Commission and the city of Vienna. Now, for a short overview of what it is, the EuroAccess is, as I already mentioned, an online search tool for EU funding. And as such, the website is, of course, free of charge, available in English. The target group, of course, are the different project promoters that might have project ideas in the EU macro regions and the different ones. And this covers all kinds of different types of organizations that might apply for EU funding in the different programs. So this covers, amongst others, NGOs, universities, SMEs, other business actors or public bodies. And the aim is to support them in finding adequate funding sources for any project ideas from many different fields, but also to support the EU macro regions by disseminating them, by further increasing their visibility, and to serve as a one-stop shop for promoters, where they can find information in a very centralized manner. The service offer of the EU, the EuroAccess, thus includes information on these 4 macro regions and the most relevant funding programs. I'm going to, in a few minutes, show you how it is, what the website actually looks like in real life. And then it has the information on the programs and the calls for proposals, always up to date, and the deadlines. Provides links to the different program websites. And very importantly, because I mentioned the mission of actually providing access, low threshold access, it allows people to filter the search results based on what kind of applicant is looking for funding, the origin, the geographic origin, the thematic focus that the project idea is best described by, and the macro region, for example, that it focuses on. And amongst the other service offers that EuroAccess includes, there's also a regular newsletter sent out that can be customized, which I'm gonna also recommend you to have a look at. And now I will give you a short introduction to the website itself, which I hope you see now. I trust that somebody will let me know if you do not see the website. But as you can see here, the focus is on the 4 different EU strategies for the macro regions, not just for the Danube region, but also the Baltic Sea region, the Adriatic Ionian region, and the Alpine region, and provides information on the macro regions. Here you have the different pillars, the geographic coverage, etc., and provides a link to further information. And then you have the main service offer of the website is this search engine that we have created, where you can select the applicant that is looking for funding. What is meant here is the type of organization. Here you can select who is looking for funding, then the origin, the different countries of the EU and the neighboring countries and the pre-accession countries. You can also select all countries from the Danube region here, for example, as an additional function. And then in the thematic focus, you could search for, let's say, only projects relating to culture, or we really have made no restrictions as to which topics we focus on. It is anything that is covered by the EU strategies for the macro regions and beyond. And then the type of funding could be grants, etc. And to allow you to imagine what it looks like, the kind of search results that you can find, the overview then provides you the type of funding program, and the specific call that is open at the moment with the funding deadline. For example, let's say we look for an Erasmus call. Here are a couple of the ones listed that are open at the moment, and I'm going to go into the call that is called Strategic Partnerships in the Field of Education, Training and Youth. That is currently open, although not for very much longer. And you see here that the type of information that is listed is really meant to provide a first short overview, a very concise and to the point of the funding program. That is Erasmus+. Then the call itself, very short what the focus is. You then have the funding area and the eligible applicants selected here. Project partner details if available, the opening deadlines, etc., etc. So this is meant to serve as a first introduction point to find the right source of EU funding. You see down here, you can add, you have the function of adding calls that you found to your funding basket, which of course is only available if you are registered, which is very low threshold as well, and of course free of charge. Or export any calls as a PDF. Let me see if I can, if I can show you what the funding basket looks like, but maybe this is actually a bit difficult in this view that I'm getting right now. In any case, what I wanted to mention is that very importantly, in addition to providing this first overview, there is also the possibility of registered users to select, okay, I am only interested in funding, for example, for the different countries of the Danube region, or only in these specific fields that I work with. And then the newsletter that is that you can register for, that is sent out roughly once a month, will be targeted specifically at your fields of interest. All right. Then let me return to my presentation. Now, as a sort of sister website to the Euro Access, many of you might have already heard about the project website Keep, that if you think about Euro Access, looking into the future projects that might be created based on the funding opportunities that are out there, then Keep is doing the same thing for the past projects that have been implemented. It's implemented by Interact and provides an overview, a documentation source for all of the different kinds of projects that were implemented within the Interact funding programs. Yes, and with that, I'm going to pass on the word to my colleague Martin Marek, who will continue talking about EU funding.
Okay, sorry, I just had to click the unmute button, and now I will just try to share my screen. So also from my side, welcome, or thank you that you're still here online. I hope you can see the screen. Yes, it's working. And I can also share my camera to say hello. I will just turn it off again because to save the bandwidth. And so as you can see on the screen, we decided to give you some hints or first kind of information of a few programs, funding programs. And Sophie mentioned Erasmus Plus in her presentation already. And why did we choose this as for a start? I would like to make the reference to what we heard before regarding the Danube Youth Action Plan. And also Erasmus Plus, as you know, has a youth focus. And I chose this program to make a little bit of appetite for those of you who are planning to do something in the field of international projects, because Erasmus Plus could be used as a vehicle to start partnerships. Generally speaking, Erasmus Plus is not offering a lot of money for development of services or your studies or things like that, but you can get a little amount of money for organizing meetings, for doing, of course, the Erasmus Plus main objectives, following your project proposals, what you will promise there. For example, I just looked up today what is still possible in 2020, and they differentiate their proposals or their contents for proposals in key actions. And for example, key action 3 is still open. There's a call open, support for policy reforms. The exact title is European Policy Experimentations in the Field of Education and Training led by high-level public authorities. Deadline is soon, but just as an example, so there are still calls open in this currently running funding period. But what could be more interesting for you is what is going on after the end of this funding period, so the end of this year, so 2021 and plus going on. What is interesting is that the Commission is actually proposing currently to double the current or past Erasmus budget to 30 billion euro, and there they would like to reserve 25.9 billion for education and training activities, 3.1 billion for youth, and 550 million for sport activities. As you know, we are quite limited on time already, and I will not go into detail regarding this, how to set up an Erasmus Plus project, but perhaps Claudia can afterwards also share the link to a webinar we recently held, and there we informed the participants also about Erasmus Plus and covered more details. But what is interesting for Erasmus Plus also in the future, it stays more or less the same. So they want to reach out people from all social backgrounds. So whenever you're planning an Erasmus Plus project, please make sure that you try to reach new target groups. From it can be within the youth target group, but perhaps you can try to reach participants or participants of the youth target groups which not yet have been reached, perhaps with lower income parents or things like that. And regarding the topics, they will lay the focus on renewable energy, climate change, environmental engineering, and artificial intelligence or design. So having said that, let's move on. This is just a quick overview who could apply for an Erasmus Plus funding. So this could be EU members, non-EU members, big organizations, small organizations. So it's quite versatile. You see, you can see yourself probably in this part of structures and organizations. And yeah, I will leave that for now. Speaking of another large program, this is the second one I would like to quickly make an appetite for you to consider in the future. Horizon Europe will be the next European framework program, number 9 then, and will also start, of course, next year. And there you have a lot of money, 100 billion euro at the moment of time. The budget is not yet finalized, but it looks like it will be approximately in this respect. It is a research and innovation program, and that's why I wanted to mention here, because many then think, okay, I have to do research, I have to do something innovative. By the way, you have to be innovative in all the programs, not only here. But as you can see, that the structure of Horizon Europe is giving you already the first hints. Pillar 2, I would like to point you to Pillar 2, Global Challenges and Industrial Competitiveness. So they are structuring their targets, main goals, what they want to achieve with their program into these pillars here. And for example, health, inclusive and secure society, digital and industry, and so on. You see, it's quite generally formulated. And when you look a little bit deeper into Pillar 2, it is separated into 5 thematic clusters. And inclusive and secure society, for example, you can find democracy, cultural heritage, social and economic transformations, and so on. And why am I mentioning this? So it is not only about developing products or doing academic research, but when you also look back in the Horizon 2020 type of actions which have been formulated, you can find, of course, the research and innovation action. which is, of course, focused on research. But you also have something on the third line here, the coordination and support actions. And that's why I'm mentioning Horizon, the framework program here today, because coordination and support action is seen as accompanying measures. For example, policy dialogues can fall into this. And it is also explicitly said no research activities are needed. So it can also fit into your probably if into your activities and your target if you do not do any research here. So please consider it, have a look. Of course, these are the type of actions from the past framework program, from the currently still running framework program, but they will be similar in the next one, Horizon Europe. And just a quick overview, what is new? They invented a kind of new techniques or funding methods, so to say, for example, the European Innovation Council. So they want to bring ideas from lab to the real world. So application from theoretic research is going into real world, but also something which is quite interesting are these research and innovation missions. And they usually also have a look at those as soon as they have been formulated, because they can be defined by the member states, by other stakeholders, citizens, European Parliament, and they always formulated a very general goal. For example, fight cancer is something which could be the title of one of these missions. Currently, you could also see like fight COVID, for example, but this can be defined by stakeholders from not only the member states or the European Parliament, but also from the citizens. So try to keep that in mind and look out for these kind of missions. And regarding how to find more information about Erasmus+, but also about Horizon, Euro Access you heard before, and of course the funding and tender portal from the European Commission. And last but not least, I would like to point you to one last thing. The European Commission was quite fast setting up the European Research Area Corona platform, as they call it. The link is in the presentation and will be sent to you. What is interesting, you can see that still under Horizon 2020 here you have running calls. Okay, FED Open is Future and Emerging Technologies. This is something very innovative and research oriented. But you can also see here that deadlines are postponed now due to the COVID crisis. So perhaps if you still want to do something this year, perhaps you can find one or the other call. So, and this is all I wanted to say today. I hope I was not too long. And I will give back to Claudia.
Hello, and thank you. Yeah, so I try to continue that with some of the funding, and I think you, yeah, and I'll briefly walk you through. Yeah, so here I can also share the screen. All right. Okay. Whoops. Yeah. So yeah, I try to walk you briefly through, and I already see that maybe the 30 minutes extension was maybe a bit too sporty, but anyway, I try to make to walk you through, and hopefully it makes sense. So now you heard a bit about Erasmus Plus and Horizon, the Horizon program. I would like to share some program information or program information from the Danube Transnational program, and that's very much directed to the Danube region. Although before I start to get into the details, I would like to say this is very important. There is no final decision yet on the Danube Transnational Program seed money facility call. It was expected to have a second call of the seed money facility in the second half of this year. However, of course, there is still the monitoring committee still needs to agree on the specifics and also on the timeline. So therefore, this is also just this is information for now, what we know now. However, there might be there's still a chance for some changes in the final decision, as it's not finally decided yet. Nevertheless, what we discussed so far with the Danube Transnational Program, the monitoring committee actually wants to have a second call for a seed from a seed money facility. The proposals again need to be linked to the priority areas in the Danube strategy, and there's also an expectation for project promoters to work closely with the priority area coordinators or the steering group members. Also, it will be quite the procedure will be quite similar than it was before. Namely, that project promoters can submit their project proposals or project ideas to priority area coordinators, but the priority areas can only submit a maximum of 3 different proposals to the Joint Secretariat for further consideration. And there will be a total budget, well, it's now expected to have a total budget of about 50,000 euros in total, which would be 85%. So 85% would be the contribution from the program, which equals 42,000, around 42,000 euros. So the big question is what kind of projects does the Danube Transnational Program want to see? So there are different. So the project proposals are that should be drafted and should be developed under the seed money facility are expected to be sectoral projects that address a topic in a comprehensive way, or sub-projects linked to a sectoral project, or parallel projects that aim at addressing a specific challenge. The important thing about this is all these project proposals can be submitted to any other project for actual program for actual implementation. It can be an EU program, it can be an operational program, or several operational programs. It can be a centrally managed program, but it also can be a non-EU funded program. And what is also important is that out of this proposal that is developed under the seed money facility, you can maybe apply to different and various funding instruments. So that means you might have a transnational approach, but then implement the project at national level through the ESF or ERDF program, or maybe use cross-border programs or transnational programs, or maybe Horizon and Erasmus. So there are a lot of different sources you can combine in the end, and by drafting this project under the seed money facility. However, we keep you posted on whether or not how this the seed money facility and how the second call will proceed, and also what are the specifics. So this is just to sort of warm you up and give you a shout out that this might be coming up in the second half of this year. Also very briefly, again, the Norway grants are already have already a lot of calls now open. I don't want to go into much into details. I think a lot of you might already be familiar with the Norway grants or EA grants. If you're not familiar, they have a very easy to use and easy to understand website, and you can also see at the how to apply section of the is a link to the website, and you can see how it works. We also have a more elaborate description of the EA grants or Norway grants in our webinar, where I will also send you the link, as Martin mentioned. And of course, we also looked up a couple of calls that might be interesting for you, and we will put them on the website, and you will get also the reference link to these calls, to the current calls that are now open. The same goes now for example. So another funding source that we want to raise your awareness to is actually private foundations. This is, I won't get too much into detail because that would be a whole new session only for foundations. But what we want to do here is to drop you a couple of links where you can see a lot of, these are links of networks for private foundations that are active in all kinds of spheres. And we would kindly ask you, or urge you, if you look for suitable funding, that you also might have a look at these networks and see where are maybe foundations that support the cause that I'm also trying to push forward. So this is maybe also an opportunity to take a look at foundations and maybe look for a foundation that matches your interests and your field of activity that could be of interest to you. And I also would like to point out to another call that's quite important, and I think this is also linked quite well to what the discussion in the first session on the embedding process, and also in terms of citizens and civil society involvement. Because here DG Regio also tries to push forward citizens' engagement, and there is a call for proposals now open to support citizen engagement in the implementation of cohesion policy. So here you find a couple of information like the objective and priorities of this call, the budget and availability, and also the deadline, which is now the 31st of May. And you see a lot more information, you get a lot more information on this call at this link. And you can also see an indicative timeline. We don't know if the timeline will be kept as it is here, but if anything, it might be postponed. But so far, this is an orientation on how much time you might have if you want to prepare a proposal for this call. If you have some more questions on these on this, you just can send us your questions, and either we are able to answer the questions to you, or we forward the questions to those who might be a bit more a bit more idea on insights on how the calls are developing. So this is now a very general overview on funding and on funding possibilities and on open calls. As I said, we will provide you with the links of all the funding and all the calls and tenders that were presented here. Now I'm jumping or getting to the last part of our session here, and that's funding for measures to tackle SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. So I think this is a very omnipresent situation at the moment, and we see that there's a lot of different there are a lot of different supporting structures around. This is just a selection. This is not an exhaustive list and not comprehensive, but we think that these are maybe quite relevant funding measures. And what we see here is maybe one of the most immediate one, which is the Coronavirus Response Investment Initiative, which basically consists of funding that otherwise would have been decommitted because it's not being used, and now it will be used to fund measures to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. So now we have a budget that's up to 37 billion, probably, because that otherwise it wouldn't add up. But there are now the managing authorities will see how this money will be spent according to the regulations, which means for you as potential beneficiaries or as potential stakeholders or project promoters, that you need to get back to the managing authorities and see how they spend the money on what measures, what maybe they have calls or maybe other procedures or accelerated procedures, but this is more or less up to the countries and up to the managing authorities in each of the EU countries. And it's also important to note that this is of course available only for stakeholders of EU member states. If you want to find out more about this coronavirus response investment initiative, we have here a link to DG Regio where this whole initiative is described in more detail. But in any case, if you want to know more about the funding, you might need to get back or get informed by the managing authorities in your country. Another fund is the EU Solidarity Fund for COVID-19. And this is actually a fund that's more well known as a major natural disaster fund. And now the purpose of this funding was extended to the pandemic and to the COVID-19 pandemic in particular. And there are now up to 800 million euros available in 2020. The fund can be mobilized at the request of an EU country, but also upon request of a country involved in accession negotiations with the Union. So that means all the accession countries are also potentially access the EU Solidarity Fund. And as far as I know, Serbia and Montenegro already have accessed this funding, and it's also linked to certain requirements. So of course the funding is accessed by the countries, by the governments. However, once the governments access the funding, it will pass on to all kinds of measures, and you can see the costs that will be covered under this EU Solidarity Fund is listed here, so you can see the scope of funding for this for the EU Solidarity Fund. Again, the way how it's been used or how it's been dispersed at national level needs to be also looked at a national basis. But if you want to see or find out a bit more about the Solidarity Fund, how it works, and who is managing the funding, yeah, please find more information at the link that is provided below. Okay, so then we come back to the EU Civil Protection Mechanism, our rescue stockpile. This is also an interesting funding and you can see who are the participating countries from the Danube region, because there are a lot of EU member states, but also a couple of non-EU member states. So yeah, basically all the EU member states are also part of this rescue stockpile or EU Civil Protection Mechanism. But additional to that, we also have Montenegro and Serbia as non-EU member states as part of this EU Civil Protection Mechanism. So this is mostly about really immediate healthcare equipment and providing immediate healthcare equipment such as ventilators and then personal protective equipment and laboratory supplies, for example. And this is also, I will also try to provide you with information on how this actually works. This might not be maybe of interest for most of you, since this is mostly addressing hospitals or healthcare institutions. Nevertheless, if you are maybe working or addressing also stakeholders in this area, yeah, this might be also information that we could pass on possibly. And again, more information is also displayed under this link. It can be accessed at the link below. Yeah, and also as Martin already mentioned, yeah, Horizon 2020 is also providing a couple of, published a couple of calls to support projects related to the COVID-19. And under the Europe Research Area Corona platform, you can see and access the latest information on open calls and tenders related to funding for measures against the coronavirus. There is also, of course, a lot of deadlines from ongoing calls, not necessarily linked to COVID-19, but in general, are also postponed at the moment. So for everyone who might need some more time to to apply for funding at Horizon 2020, this might also be an opportunity for you to fine-tune your applications if you need to. Other than that, Horizon 2020 has over 40 million or almost up to 50 million euros for research projects on developing vaccines, treatments, diagnostic tests, etc. And again, eligible partners are, of course, EU member states, and then it's also depending on, but also a couple of non-EU member states, but this is also something that you can see and access at the call information of Horizon 2020, what our other stakeholders might also be available or eligible for funding. And now, last but not least, in this list, we have the EU global response to the coronavirus, the Team Europe package, and this is one of the few instruments at EU level that we have that also supports countries of, well, non-EU member states such as accession countries, but also countries of the European Eastern Partnership. So this is also relevant for the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine. So there are about 15.6 billion. This is really for the global package. And this comes from existing programs, from money coming from the European Union, from the member states, from financial institutions, and also from the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So there are also a couple of focus areas of this funding, of this global response or Team Europe package, which refers to immediate health crisis and humanitarian needs. It's also about strengthening health, water and sanitation systems, and mitigating the immediate social and economic consequences. How this mechanism works in detail and who is responsible for administering and managing this is also something that we that needs to be looked at a more detailed basis and on a more on different levels for different countries. Nevertheless, we have this package, and if you have further questions, so that we could also try to reach out to DG NEAR and maybe receive some more information, and maybe also DG Reaches might help us in getting more details on how this works and who already accessed this package and when the support is effective. But so far, if you want to read a bit more about this Team Europe package, the EU global response to the coronavirus, you find a couple of some information on this at the links below. Okay, so this is now, so for more information about everything that we discussed today, for the meeting will be, the recording of this meeting will be available, just as well as the presentations and further links to more detailed information on what we discussed today and so far. And please, for this, you can always visit the different communication information channels, such as our website, such as our Facebook page, our Twitter account, and of course, we also now recently have a YouTube account. But of course, we will also send you the link in the mailing that we send to you in after this meeting, where we provide you also with the presentations directly. Nevertheless, we try to keep you informed on a regular basis if you have more questions or if you have some more need to find out a bit more about, for example, available funding or funding possibilities. Please get back to us, write us, ask us. We try to support you and to respond as good as we can and try to be as helpful as we can. So if you don't have any questions right away, you still have the possibility to send us your questions after this meeting. And also, of course, we will also be very glad if you could provide us with some information, particularly regarding our Danube Participation Day and youth initiatives. So this actually leaves me asking you if you have any further questions for me that you want to have answered right away. I see that as a no, and I think that we already exceeded our time by far. I am very, very grateful for you that you were bearing with us, for your patience, and we try to improve our time management for the next meetings. Yeah, in any case, I'm very glad that you were all here and that we had the possibility to meet and to share some of the information with you, and hope that we can maybe soon have this again. Yeah, and this leaves me to wish you a pleasant day and all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and yeah, hopefully see you soon again. So bye-bye. It was a pleasure. Well, not quite seeing you, but at least getting in touch with you. And yeah, bye. Take care.